format.
I think you turning on the recording muted us. So sorry.
Oh, I thought because I am not the owner, right?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. All right. So let's start that again. So welcome to the August 14th OMR Architecture Meeting. Yeah, so I was saying that today we're having a bit of a different format. 2 days ago, we had undertaken something that we've been trying to do for several years, which was introduce some automatic source code formatting for the compiler component. So that is now active. The code base has been entirely reformatted. There's now a job that runs when you push commits that will check to see whether or not they are formatted properly, and if not, it will report an error for you to go and fix. But one of the consequences of that is that any pull requests that were outstanding prior to that the code formatting being merged that affected the compiler component will likely need to be rebased in some way. And so Erwin has, in previous meetings, he has discussed ways of doing that and how this overall process works. But what we thought we could do today is to essentially have a Q&A session if people have tried to do rebasing and they've had some issues with them, or if you have any questions at all about how the process works or anything like that. Erwin is certainly here to answer questions and others as well if necessary. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, unless Erwin, you have anything you want to say at this point?
No, I don't have anything aside from just informational wise. If you look at the agenda issue, I linked an issue that I've opened. They're just collection of tasks that we should do now post code format. So one of them is, I think, the one that I think if you guys see places that the format was better before, you could probably just flag it so that we can wrap it with the Clang format pragmas. The one that I found that I'm kind of surprised no one saw before was the if you go to OMR options at HPP and you look at the what is it called, the options bits, they were better before because all of the hex numbers were aligned properly, but Clang format went and sort of said, well, they're just enums, so they put them right beside each other. So I think that's a place we'll have to go and fix the formatting and wrap with the Clang format pragmas. But if you guys see anything else, or if you have any other issues that you want to open up, you can use that post code format issue to sort of collect up all the issues. But yeah, that's all.
So I can just give a bit of my own experience with this so far. So I did notice that thing in omroptions.hpp. But one of the things that I was able to do over the past couple of days was I had a fairly large pull request open for quite some time. It's not a pull request yet, but I've had some changes open for quite some time that affects pretty much every area of the code. And I was able to successfully reformat that. It was generally straightforward, I guess you could say. There were some complications that one of the first things that I ran into, and I think I'm going to be running into in the future, is that I didn't install Clang format on I have a Mac, an M1 Mac, and I didn't install Clang format on it. So I was expecting at some point to be able to use the Docker file, which I can't use on Mac. So I tried running it on an ARM virtual machine that I have running on my Mac, and that didn't work at all. The Docker file, there were dependencies that couldn't get resolved. So I ended up having to run it on an x86 virtual machine that I have access to elsewhere. So that's a bit of an inconvenience, but it's I don't know, maybe something that I have to figure out a better workflow for, or if you happen to know the reasons why I can't run that Docker file on an ARM VM. I just spent no time debugging that other than just noting what the issues were.
I don't. I had only ever tested on x86 the Docker file. So I'd have to look at the issues. I know when I was creating the Docker file, I spent a bunch of time trying to find the dependencies, the minimal set, that libt info being the biggest one. You could like there's nothing stopping anyone from using Clang format directly. The only benefit of the Docker file is that you don't have to think about the version, right? But if you're careful to make sure that the version you're using is the same as the one in the Docker file, you could just install it locally and see if that works, right?
Yeah, I might do that. I was hoping for an easier workflow, at least to begin with, but
That honestly might be the easiest one rather than debugging the Docker file. The Docker file also sort of just in my mind exists as sort of hey, this is what you need. This is the minimal set of things you need. Kind of like the OpenJ9 build stuff, where they you know they have a Docker file, but they also say, well, you can look at the dependencies of the Docker file and use that to build locally if you want. This is far simpler, obviously, but yeah, I haven't debugged the Docker file in other platforms, being the short answer, but it's definitely something we can look into over time.
so beyond that, I generally had a fairly straightforward process in terms of just reformatting. I needed to run the namespace formatter, and then I ran the Docker file on each file that I needed to, and I had like about 20 commits as well that I had to do this over repeatedly, and it generally went fairly smoothly. So I think it's now in a state where it seems to be finished. I guess the reason I'm saying is that if people are having this was a fairly complex set of changes and very pervasive. So I had relatively little difficulty getting that done. So if you were worried about your pull requests that are already open and how difficult it's going to be, I guess I'm just here to reassure you that it may not be as difficult as you think it is. It might be. Anybody have any questions about
Yeah,
this
so I have
process, or have you anybody
some
done?
comments. So the first one is, I'd suggest you try to resist the temptation to tell Clang format, no, we want it this way instead of that way, like, or at least give it some time. I think it's just going to be a matter of getting accustomed to the new format. And so the mention of the options file, yes, people generally kept things lined up, but I don't think it's that bad. So anyway, so that's my first point. The second is I tried to use the Clang format in the Docker file on my Fedora system. And so the first problem was I don't have Docker, I have Podman. And so the Docker file itself needed a little tweaking to please Podman. And so I did manage to get the image built, but it doesn't run. And I forget the specific error, but it's complaining about some shared object on my system that is not the right version or can't get the version, something to that effect. So I'm trying to sort that out. But along the way, I installed the pre-commit hook. And I think we need to improve that hook a little bit because it had the nasty side effect of, this problem with running the formatter had the nasty side effect of just erasing that file. Right. So it ran, got no output, and then moved the empty file on top of the thing that I had. I mean, I didn't make an important change to it, thank God, but people who are making important changes wouldn't like them erased. So I have some ideas about how we can improve the pre-commit hook so it doesn't do that sort of thing.
So if there are problems like that with the pre-commit hook that you have found, I wonder if this is something that, until those issues get fixed, I wonder if this is something that we should recommend people not do in the meantime, because if people don't know about this, they might get burned worse than Keith did.
Yeah, so my idea here, the pre-commit hook just blindly runs the formatter over a source file and then replaces it with the output of the formatter. My suggestion is to just first check that the input file is not empty before running the formatter. And if the output file is empty, then there was a problem, and don't erase the input. So it would take care of the specific case that I had. But actually, it reminds me, this all worked nicely. Like I wasn't sure whether it was going to work with Eclipse, but it turns out it does. Right, so you don't have to resort to the command line to commit things. You can just push the commit button in Eclipse, and it knows to run the pre-commit hook.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, I guess the doc can be updated to either remove the pre-commit hook or just sort of say, or I mean, like, add in the fixes you're talking about, so that way it's more robust. I
forget whether the Docker file is just in an MD file, or I guess that's the only
Docker
place to
file
do
is an actual Docker file in the repo.
Sure,
but
the pre-commit hook is just
it's just in the .md file because I didn't want to put it as a script that people could use. I put it more as, here's an example, because it also depends on what people are doing with their like some people have more involved pre-commit hooks to begin with already, so it's more of a, hey, here's how you can do it. But maybe we should make that more explicit.
Yeah, so just making it conditional on, only applying it to non-empty files and then detecting if something goes wrong, rather than erase people's work.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
I mean, that's easy to do, and I can include that in my pull request to fix the other things that I've noticed.
Yeah, that's fine. That sounds good. With respect to the resisting what client format is doing, I think that you're right, but there's some places where I think it absolutely makes sense to do, because the options file specifically.
I wasn't suggesting we never override it, but I'm suggesting we should resist the temptation to do it.
Right.
The bar should be high for when we decided, we don't like client format. I mean, we just finished agreeing that we did like it, and that's why we applied it to the whole code base. Right?
Yeah. No, I think that is, I think, the bar should be very high. It's just there are some places where just like compiler devs are gonna know that, no, this is not right. And I'm not saying you just go change it. I think it's something that should probably be discussed with committers or leads or whoever. But the obvious one is the options file. Like, it's when you look at it and like the enum uses essentially one hot encoding, and so if it's not nicely formatted, it is not obvious sometimes that you haven't reused a bit. And so I think for making sure that, like, I think for it's not really conceptual integrity. I think it's more readability. Actually, it really does need to not be client formatted. I think just the body of the enum. The rest of it, I think, is completely fine, right? It's just some of these enums that use one hot encoding.
Yeah, the issue that I had with that options table actually was not with the Clang formatting. It's the fact that the Clang formatting did not adjust the comments. Like there are certain ones that are commented out that claim that they're available, but they were formatted the same way as the active enum entries, but Clang format didn't touch those. Like they're still treated as comment.
I
So
think that the comments in Clang format are just a text to string, and they don't go try to improve it in any
yes,
way.
but what I'm saying is that's what's making, at least to my eye, that's what's making it look ugly, is the fact that the comments weren't done as well. I have no problem doing it one way or the other, either reformatting the comments or doing as you're suggesting, put it around the whole table, all those different arrays or enums, and format it the way that it used to be. I mean, that's when we had talked about doing Clang formatting in meetings past, in months past, one of the areas that we said that we would probably apply this is if there's been some code that's been very carefully formatted for readability, or a comment that's been formatted for readability, that would be a good use case for applying this sort of thing. So, I mean, personally, I don't mind if you want to do it to that table. And I don't think many would object to that, to what you want to do. So,
but actually, I'm just looking at that file. A little bit surprised that it didn't merge the TR namespace declarations. There are 4 or 5 of them by my count.
So the script that merged the namespaces was not part of Clang format. It was like.
Well, I understand that it was supposed to be done first, but it doesn't seem to have had the right effect on this file. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, right. I know. I was getting to that. If the Perl scripts were not particularly sophisticated, so it looked at adjacent namespace declarations and merged those. But if you had something where it was, I think, namespace TR and then namespace OMR and the namespace TR, it didn't actually try and merge all of those things.
There are 3 adjacent namespace TRs at the beginning of this file. It didn't merge them. So there is an intervening namespace OMR and then another namespace TR. But so I would have expected the first 3 to be merged if that was the explanation.
Maybe because of the new line between them. Because I think I was looking at the majority of the namespace declarations, and
anyway, that's something we can fix easily. We don't need to belabor the point, but
yeah, I
you can
think
just fix it up
very
manually
few of those. Yeah,
as you see them. Yeah.
There's also some places I was looking at in the code where if the else had a comment beside it, it didn't move the bracket up. Something we'd have to just fix manually over there too. What I was actually kind of pleasantly surprised about was that some of the more complicated conditions we have in some of the if statements, say like in local ops or something, are surprisingly readable because it formatted it such that every level got its own indentation. And so it was very obvious to tell which one is being ORed, like which set of conditions is being ORed in a particular level. So at least that part, I think, was one of the concerns we had about readability, and I think that actually improved.
One thing that I was a bit surprised at, I wouldn't say pleasantly, but not negatively, was how it's chopping a source line at a certain boundary, right? I don't know what the line width is set to. Is it like
It's
80 or 90?
120.
Is it 120?
Yeah.
So I didn't realize that it would be it would be as aggressive in enforcing that. So what I've seen it do is if there's a literal string, it will actually break that literal string at some point close to that, and then restart it on the next line, which was a bit surprising, because if you're used to searching for something in that string, you now have to consider the possibility that the thing you're searching for is now broken across multiple lines. So
Yeah, it also reflows comments where the lines are too long.
yeah. Oh, okay. I didn't experience that yet, but it was just unexpected. I didn't. Maybe it's just something I have to get used to. Keith, did you have other concerns that or observations you wanted to bring up? You said you had a few there.
No, I mean, I might have more if I had not run into the issues I pointed out. So, I learned that it does work well and integrates with my IDE of choice, so that's good. I was able to build the Docker image after a little, we keep calling it Docker, but it's a Podman image for me. And we probably should have the instructions describe how to do it both for Docker or Podman. But like I say, the failure mode is not particularly pleasant, so we need to fix that. But once we get past those, I may have more feedback. But that's it for now.
Okay. Erwin, I did you mention the commit that you have for the git ignore?
I didn't mention it here verbally, but it's part of that issue that's
Okay.
dangled off of the.
Do you just want to
agenda.
describe that?
Yeah.
For people.
So there's git blame has an option I can't remember the exact option. I think it's like ignore revs file or something like that. It's basically a way. It has ignore revs, but also an ignore revs file for if you want to specify more than one revision SHA. The point of it is to allow git blame to ignore certain commits, and for the purpose of git blame, really, this particular commit, technically two commits, the merge namespaces and the code format commit, really don't need to be considered when trying to blame a file, especially because every single line is going to point to this commit. And so I opened up here to add the file specifically because it's rather than just writing a doc. Because apparently GitHub, it might still be in beta, but GitHub also supports that file. So when you use blame in GitHub itself on I'm not sure about the desktop app, but on the browser, if that file sits in the root directory of the repo, it will use it to ignore the SHAs, the revisions when you're blaming a particular file.
Does that work very well? Because it's easy to imagine how it might ignore, say, changes to white space within lines, everything got reindented or something. Like it could match that up pretty easily. But what does it do when you give it this reformatting? Does it figure out the right thing somehow?
No, I mean no idea right now. I'd have to.
I think
is there a way to try it out?
I think that's just what the name suggests, that it ignores commits, right? And so if something didn't change between, the commit before and the commit after this, well, then nothing changed as far as this would be concerned. My concern would be if you put this file in the repo for everybody to have, is there a way to turn it off? I guess, I mean, you can always delete or empty that file, I suppose, but are there other mechanisms to say, ignore the git ignore?
I think if you're using the browser, maybe not. If you're doing git blame yourself, I don't think by default it looks to that file. I think you have to actually specify the file.
Okay.
The file is just named that way, the dot whatever, specifically for GitHub. I think GitHub looks at that file. But if you're using Git
I mean,
yourself, it doesn't know about the file. You'd have to tell it.
okay. Yeah, so
So-
one way or the other, I think we want sometimes to be able to, to see these contributions to the history. We think there's nothing significant happening in there, but maybe one day we'll find out we were wrong. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy enough for us to not even add the file in that case, right? We can just put it as a doc. But I open the PRs so it can be discussed and people can decide one way or another.
All right. Are there other questions or any sort of comments that people want to make? Like I said, we don't really have any sort of set agenda here, so if there's nothing that people want to talk about, we can obviously end early.
Well, I'll make a point about the Docker image. I use WSL2, so I have a Windows box, but I run Linux via WSL2, and so Docker doesn't work there because there's no daemon you can keep running. So I've been using Podman, and it's been fine, but I also use sudo Podman just to get around some of the issues. And so with sudo Podman, the Clang format stuff, the Clang format image works fine. I know I've talked to, I think Devin ran into some problems with, and he was using Podman, but I don't think he was using it as privileged. So I know he ran into some issues initially.
Right. There was a file permission issue when you run unprivileged. I needed to add :Z to the end of the argument to the -v switch that's mounting source and the /source inside the container. And at the time, what I did was I made a temp directory and copied this file I want to format into there, and then I used that there because I didn't want Podman messing with, I don't know, SE Linux labels or whatever it's doing to whatever it's doing on the host side to allow the permissions. I didn't want it messing with that, so I copied it to a temp dir, and then I used the temp dir and added the :Z. I ran into some other problems with the Docker file that, I mean, I'm not even remembering all of them right now. Let me see. I know I talked to Erwin about it. Where is this? So, right, I had a problem with the tar command because tar thinks that it's root, and so it tries to preserve the owner UID of all the files.
Yeah, there's an option. I encountered that problem too.
Yeah. So I had to add
the
no
O
same
option
owner.
fixes that.
Yeah.
That would be included in the changes I've got. Yeah.
Right. So those were the two problems that I had. So maybe Keith, maybe you're having a permission issue.
So I had a problem running Podman rootless at first, but there's some, I forget what the idea is, but there's sort of sub UIDs, I think is the notion, so that when you run rootless, it uses IDs from that list, but I hadn't configured my system to specify those things. So it wasn't a problem with the Docker file itself. It was a problem with the way my system was set up. And once I fixed that, we're all good. And so I haven't had to I didn't need to run Podman as root.
Okay. But anyway, I'm not even using a container anymore. I deleted my container. I just grabbed the Clang format from that release. I tried to use the same binary that the container uses, but it didn't run on my system. So I grabbed the source for that release and I built it. and I just run that because what I found is that it's noticeably faster than running Podman run.
Yeah, I might expect that, but I don't know that I'd expect it to be a lot faster. But you're still just starting a process just or maybe two, but two instead of one, but it's going to do the same sorts of things.
I'm running it many times because I'm working on improved Git hooks for my own use and for getting my stuff past the big reformat that I will share once I'm happy enough with them. But I'm running it a lot, and so it was adding I don't know, like a fraction of a second every time I run it, but you run it enough times and that adds up.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, I guess this is it's good that their proposed workflow is just a proposal, and people are free to tinker with it how they please, as long as the result is fine once it gets to GitHub, right?
Agreed.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so I mean, I guess people just keep getting familiarized with the new format, and I imagine that there might be some feedback as more and more people start to use some of the tooling that's there, or getting this into their workflow, or challenges with that. Are there any other comments that people want to make? Okay. All right. If not, then I think we can call it early here then. Thanks again, Erwin, for shepherding us through this through this. It's been a very long time coming. I know there's been a lot of technology hurdles in the way, and infrastructural hurdles in the way, and even socialization hurdles that we needed to get through here. So so certainly thanks for all the effort you put into getting us there, and hopefully this is something that we can build on even going forward, and perhaps even think about other downstream projects incorporating this as well. So okay, all right. Well, with that, I guess we'll call it here this week, and we'll meet again in 2 weeks. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.